Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are listening to Sons of Ours podcast. My name is Ian Wintering.
And I am Micah Flores.
So today, it was one of those episodes where we kind of threw something together really last minute for you guys. So we're going to be going on Easter break next week, or this weekend is right before a lot of us are going on Easter break. So and you won't really hear from us.
Candidacy this weekend.
Right, that's right. So you won't really hear from us as we one of the kind of the last episodes before Easter break. So, but we want to bring our friend Tim Skoke here.
He's
because,
all hot and sweaty right now.
Yeah, we had to open the window. We had to open the window in this room because he just came from our basketball tournament that we just started today. It's an intramural basketball tournament, but
yeah, all the different parish houses have one team, and then we have a 2-game elimination tournament going on, and for the next 2 weeks. So this week and next week. So it's kind of a fun thing that we do every year. And usually gets pretty competitive with all of us.
Too competitive.
Hopefully this year no one gets knocked on the floor. That's definitely happened in years past. Try to keep the fouls to a minimum.
Right.
Yeah, but so we have Tim Skoke with us today. Why don't you say hello to us, Tim?
Yeah. So like they said, we had the basketball tournament started today, and actually, Mike, I did fall from 8 feet today, so I fell over one of the SY guys trying to
8 feet.
Oh yeah, trying to block him and just straight on my back. But Ryan Mack has my back, and he asked if I was okay.
Was he the only one?
Yeah, he was the only one. He was the only one concerned with my well-being. But I kept playing, so maybe.
The people on your team were like, "Get up, Tim. We really need you, man."
Yeah, but hey, we got the win, and just a little bit about myself. I come from the state of Nebraska, born and raised in Hastings, 5th of 7, and then I went to the University of Kansas, where I was around the game of basketball for 3 years with the university there as a student manager, and I came to love the game, maybe too much for seminary liking, but we got the win today, and it was virtuous, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, the second Nebraska boy in a row that we've had on. We had Tony Davis on last week.
That's right, yeah.
And we've been laughing about Nebraska's new motto, that honestly, it's not for everyone.
Right.
Actually, so Tony mentioned it on the last podcast, and then I saw it in a magazine this week, and I just started laughing so hard.
I beg to differ. I think it is for everyone, but
well, it's like you can't tell. It's like, are the Nebraskans saying like, honestly, it's not for everyone. You guys really need to stay out of here because we don't want it to get too populated, or is it like, we're kind of weird? Honestly, it's not for everyone.
Oh yeah. Good.
I can't really tell.
I think it's more of this latter because I've driven through Kansas, or not through Kansas. Excuse me. I've driven through Nebraska, and it was.
They're about the same. So
Nebraska has more hills. That's the difference, and they don't have that magical.
Wrong. Kansas has more hills.
No.
Nebraska's all cornfields, Ian.
No, I know, but right, flat cornfields. Yeah. Kansas was more of a hill, or Nebraska was more of a hilly drive, and Kansas had that weird fountain thing.
There's the sand hills in the Nebraska, and then there's the Flint hills in Kansas. So I can see how you might get it wrong. We forgive you. Us Midwestern folk.
Yeah, have you been to that ski resort in Kansas?
No. What is it, Magic Mountain? Or
I don't know.
No,
one of the KCK guys, is it Colin or Jeffrey, who are also on the show, it's Thomas. Thomas Maddock has a shirt that says Ski Kansas, and I just always chuckle whenever I see it. Especially being in Colorado, where, I don't know, I can't just imagine what
It's a little sled hill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called.
They have snowmobiles that take you up and down.
It's terrible. Porkies for skiing, anyway.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on today, Tim.
You're welcome.
We're glad we could have you.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of crazy going straight in from the basketball game, but it should be fun. Yeah. So over Thanksgiving break, I ended up going to Wyoming. Went out to Wyoming with another one of the brothers, Trevor. Trevor's first theologian. He's in my class. And we went out to Wyoming, and there's this great family with about 8 kids that were hosting us that Trevor knew. He actually stayed with them when he was attending Wyoming Catholic College. And so we're all hanging out there, welcoming us. It was the first day there, and they asked us like how seminary life was going and stuff like that, and at first we were just like, oh, it's been fine, like academics are starting off, it's been a little bit of a transition moving into theology, and then after we kind of like prefaced it with like the good things, then we like started to complain a little bit.
Let me tell you how I really feel.
Because all of us know that when it comes time for Thanksgiving, we're a little worn out. But yeah, so I was talking about that, and then I was like, yeah, things sometimes are hard at the seminary. And this 10-year-old boy looks up at me and goes, yeah, but anything good worth striving for is going to be difficult. And I was just like, just like that knife in the heart. I was like, oh my gosh, this 10-year-old boy just called me out. Like, what am I going to say? I can't do anything. Like, he's speaking the truth. And it's just like so funny, the words from a boy, just like that the Lord uses to kind of like pierce through and show you the reality of the situation. And right after he said that, his parents were like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry, like, you're like, be nice, David, like, what are you doing? Like, he's one of our guests.
No, don't be nice, David. Be real, David. Keep doing you, David.
And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today.
Right.
That kind of transitioned us into our topic of just talking about affability and flattery. Affability being, like something that is virtuous to strive for, and flattery being something that is kind of like a negative extreme.
Right. It's the vice of the virtue. Affability being the virtue that like allows us to relate well with others, to please people when we need to affirm them when we need to love them in that way, and then also to be able to love them in another way where sometimes we have to displease them or call them on to something greater, which can be received a lot of times in a way that's that feels painful, you know?
But also can be done, though, because the 10-year-old did it to you, called you on to something greater.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, some of like, the really holy women that I've met in my life have a way of doing it, too. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but even just, like, moms, when they, like... recognize that you're just like being a baby or something like that, and they say it to you, and what can you say? You're just like, wow, yeah, I really just need to kind of be more of a man in the situation, like.
But yeah, and I think this is such an important topic, especially given the state kind of our culture today, where we're almost being polite or being nice has become this pagan virtue, right? Like, that is the end-all be-all, is to be nice. And I remember our Bishop Olmsted from the Diocese of Phoenix a while back. This was a long time ago, but I remember it made an impact on me. He gave a homily talking about nice, right? The word nice, and how it's actually it comes from the root word of it is a Latin word. I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation. Nascere, is that right?
Yeah.
Nascere, which actually means ignorant.
Yeah.
And I looked this up to double check it, because I was like, that's probably one of those things where people say it, but it's not really true. It actually is.
Yeah.
So in the Old English Dictionary,
you're going to fact check your bishop? Wow.
Well, no, this was me fact checking today to make sure that I was remembering correctly.
Good save, Ian. Good save, but
because anyway, so in the old dictionaries in English, nice, actually, the definition of nice used to be foolish, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of like, I'm just going to be nice to these people because it's really the right thing to do. I don't want to hurt their feelings or anything. And it really just has to do with this foolishness, right? This ignorance of like not actually bringing somebody to the truth, or actually bringing somebody to the good,
Right. To be honest with them.
And I think that's interesting with Micah's story about David, because the parents were saying, be nice, David, but it's like, no, David wasn't being nice. David, in his 10-year-old innocence, in his 10-year-old true heart was seeing something that needed to be said to Micah, seeing Micah be less than what he could have been.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
challenge him to say, no, it's worth fighting for, Micah. Go get it.
Yeah.
So he was being himself. He wasn't being nice. If he was being nice, he said, yeah, it's okay, Micah.
seminary so hard.
I'll pet him on your arm and whatever. It's okay. It'll be okay.
Yeah. This guy who's got like 7 brothers and sisters, who knows like the real struggle of like
David had 7 brothers and sisters?
Yeah.
Oh, boss. He's a boss. Yep. Don't
Yeah.
have to
So I mean, it was awesome. Yeah, but so this idea of just like niceness being the predominant thing that people are striving for, like C.S. Lewis sums up really well. So he's got this book, The Problem of Pain, and he's just talking about the wickedness of man, and he's talking about modern society right now and what we really struggle with, because we have this tendency to look back on other cultures and say, look how much more brutal they were so wicked towards each other, and pick your different vice that each kind of century has struggled with. And he's talking about like the 20th century man, and he talks about how we have basically reduced all other virtues to just being nice. So he says, I'll just start from the top. Perhaps my harping on the word kindness has already aroused a protest in some readers' minds. Are we not really an increasingly cruel age? Perhaps we are. But I think we have become so in the attempt to reduce all virtues to kindness. For Plato rightly taught that virtue is one. You cannot be kind unless you have all the other virtues. If being cowardly, conceited, and slothful, you have never yet done a fellow creature great mischief, that is only because your neighbor's welfare has not yet happened to conflict with your safety, self-approval, or ease. Every vice leads to cruelty. Even a good emotion, pity, if not controlled by charity and justice, leads through anger to cruelty. And so I just really liked this, and it kind of like highlights our struggle right now in the 20th and 21st century, and the funny thing is like the main reason I wanted to talk about this on the show is because it's like one of the things that I'm trying to grow most in formation right now, which is kind of funny, So I'm speaking right now more from like
Your own heart.
My own heart and
Praise God,
my own
Micah.
experience. And like the freedom that I'm starting to taste and experience as I continue to grow in this virtue, or at least try to, because I think it's really powerful, right? And so why is this? So C.S. Lewis is talking about in his book how we kind of just focus on what's in the public sphere, right? So if we're being nice when it comes to being around other people, and we're not offending anyone, and we're not causing any conflict and all these different things, that's all well and good. But if we're going to our house and we're bickering with our parents or with our siblings, and not only that, but just like struggling from sloth, or any of those different vices that he was talking about, that kind of that he mentioned, then that actually those vices, even though they're not public to everyone else, still have a really harmful effect on us, right? And because this is what it means to be a person, to be someone who acts, is that everything that we do shapes who we become, right? So we're acting persons.
I took kind of this, and Mike and I have had an encounter with this, you could say.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to share? Do you want to share that encounter, Micah? Maybe that will better transition.
Yeah, totally. That sounds good. So, Tim is in second philosophy right now.
Yeah.
I think he mentioned that. So he's in anthropology this semester.
And last semester was ethics.
Last semester was ethics.
Ethics is the big one we're learning about.
Right.
Being, well, I guess both of them. But
yeah.
That's where it was first introduced to me was ethics. So.
Right. So like everything, this is what's so cool about being a human being, is that everything that we choose to do affects who we become. That like we're either being shaped more to be more like God, to become more in His likeness, or we're being shaped to be more unlike God. You know, to be vicious, to be more animalistic in a sense.
Yeah.
So we were talking about his paper that he was writing.
Yep.
And what's the name of your paper?
So yeah, the name of the paper is "The Abuse of Language with Respect to Modern Technology," and actually it was inspired by John Stang. But even before John Stang, so John Stang.
It was inspired by John Stang.
Yeah, so he wrote his paper. On this, and then because I was wondering what I was going to do mine on, and the priest up in Boulder at the college, not Father Sean, but Father
Peter Mussett.
Father Peter Mussett loves Pieper, and a while ago,
yeah,
when
he's
I was
awesome.
That's right.
him, he told me to get into Joseph Pieper, and so yeah, that's what I decided to do. My paper on was the abuse of language, but
yeah. So I was walking we were going to Spanish class, so we were walking into our classroom building, and I have my head buried in my cell phone.
That's an understatement.
Yeah,
He was checked out of the world.
Totally oblivious to everything else going on around me as I was walking over there, like. Oh, because we have to like make use of like every little bit of spare time, you know. And so I was texting. I don't remember who I was responding to.
You don't even remember.
But Tim comes up to me and is like, "Get your head out of your phone, Micah. Like you don't even know we're around you right now." And then after he says that, he says, "Micah, you should really read my paper. I just wrote all about social media and how it affects our relationships." And at first, the first thing I wanted to do the first thing I wanted to do was just like punch Tim right in the gut. I was like,
it wouldn't have taken him far.
Because it's like what we're talking about. It's like that experience of like he's calling me on to something greater, and right now I can't fully receive it.
I was the 10-year-old David. Praise
God. Man.
So why I got on him for that is I think it comes out in the paper, but so we're back to ethics. Father Angel is a brilliant man. He taught us what an acting subject was, and I after reading what this definition in his handout, it inspired me, and so I'll give a brief definition of it. But Father Angel says an acting subject is a human being as body and soul unity, equipped with drives, affects, and emotions, weak in instinct, but at the same time capable, through intellect and will, of moving out from his own center and transcending himself towards what is other. And that was in the back of my mind.
Okay, but hold on.
Yes.
For most of our listeners, I have a feeling they're not going to know at all what you just said. Can you translate that?
So, yeah, and actually that comes
me
from,
too, right?
So that comes from, it does come from Martin Ronheimer in his book, The Perspective of Morality. But ultimately what it means is that even when we're sitting right here doing this podcast, if I want to encounter either one of you, I give you myself by looking at you, right? Mm-hmm. That's just one element I give myself. I can also give you myself by leaning in towards you. Or I can remove myself by whipping out my phone and putting it on the desk and scrolling through nothingness, like Micah kind of was doing. No, he was probably doing something. But so those are just separate. Like, does that make sense a little bit more?
I think so. Yeah.
So the big key is affects, emotions, and you're just like, it's like, oh, there is somebody who's more than just. I don't know.
It's more than just. The communication with another person by words. It's like it's the actual presence of the person, their body language, everything.
Body language. Oh, Coach Howard from KU.
Yeah.
He'd be harping on me on my body language. Change your body language, fam. I'm sorry. I don't have my phone out, I swear.
Yeah. So Tim wrote this paper, and after I kind of like had a chance to cool down a little bit. I wasn't overly upset, but I definitely had to like take a step back and say, okay, Tim's trying to help me. He's trying to call me on to something here. And so he sent me his paper actually, and I ended up reading it. And And then it inspired me to read the book too, The Abuse of Language and Power. And so I read both, and what stuck out to me was this section on flattery, which is kind of what we were talking about. This vice where we're just like nice to everyone, no matter what, regardless of what the truth is of the situation, or whether we're being honest with someone or not. So what stuck out to me was that when we're not being honest because we're just trying to be nice to someone to avoid any argumentation, to avoid any conflict, then we're actually not treating the person that we're talking to as a human being. We're treating them in a way that says, you can't handle the truth right now. And by me saying that, like, you can't handle the truth of the situation, I'm saying that you don't have, like, the capacity to, like, reason towards it, almost, right? And, I mean, that's not what you mean to do when you're just, like, pleasing someone or not being honest with them. But that's kind of, like, what ends up happening. And I think we can all go back to different situations in our life where someone hurt us because they weren't completely honest with us, where we didn't know exactly how they were feeling, and because we didn't know how they were feeling, like, we weren't able to properly be with them, to properly interact with them, you know. And so it was this quote that kind of, like, inspired me to look more into this topic, to pray about it, and then to start to try to grow in the virtue of what it means to truly be friendly with someone, to be kind and to be affable.
Yeah, and I think you touch on a good point of just being with someone, right?
Right.
I think that in itself, being with someone and not having any expectations, is kind of lost art in itself.
Yeah.
But you know, one of the big inspirations for the paper was a personal testimony, like you said of yourself. It was a personal testimony of, like, where was I going wrong in my 4 formative years at KU, at the University of Kansas? And
yeah,
in many respects, a lot had to do with, you know, either I was around people on their phone, or myself. You know, I got myself into trouble by you know, acting on my desire to
be well liked.
Be well liked. So
Yeah,
just send a flippant text, just something that didn't really mean much, could lead to something, you know, later that, you know, had great consequences. But
right.
I think you could also see it in the opening paragraph of the paper. I tell the reader to go and Google an image of Tiger Woods teeing off in 2002 as opposed to him teeing off in 2018. And in those, if you actually go and Google the photo, every single person, right, instead of taking in Tiger Woods and his beautiful swing off of the tee box, taking it in with one another, they're taking it in through their cell phone. I'm not kidding you. Every single person in the picture has their cell phone out, watching him tee off. Whereas it's like your brother and your sister are to your left and your right, and it's like, what a beautiful swing, you know.
Yeah.
First off, what a beautiful day, right? We're on a golf course with a bunch of pros watching them do their thing, and it's like, oh no, I have to capture this so I can go home and show everybody. That's not life. That's not learning.
Right. And it's like, so when I visited the Grand Canyon, which if you haven't ever been there, it's absolutely beautiful, and you could spend hours there just admiring this place, right?
Yeah.
But when I was talking to the ranger, they were telling me that the average person stays there for 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Dang.
And it's like,
yeah,
it's the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Like, you hear the word and you're like...
I have the picture on my phone now, so I can just look at it whenever.
That's sad. That's so sad.
Yeah, and so I think this kind of gets to, like, what we're trying to talk about, right? Because the screen a lot of times inhibits us from really seeing the truth of a situation, and to have the virtue of affability or friendliness, to please people when we need to, and to, I guess, upset them out of love, out of charity when we need to.
That's key right there, is the charity part.
Yeah, we need to be able to see the truth in different situations, and in seeing the truth, then we're able to be honest with someone, right? And so when we have screens, when we're at the Grand Canyon or something and we're worried about taking a picture. We're on top of a 14er and we're worried about taking a picture. We're not actually able to take in the like dramaticism of what is surrounding us in that moment. The beauty, what God has created for us to enjoy, we're not able to take in the same way. Right? One, because we're kind of like worried about getting the angle, or we're worried about getting the right shot. Yeah. And then once we get the shot, then we're out of there. But there's so much more that we can notice in each situation when we sit there undistracted, just kind of like taking in the surroundings. And when we're talking with another person, you know, because if I'm up there with Tim at the Grand Canyon, Tim could see something that I didn't, and then he can say something like, hey, did you see that like really cool blue jay or something over there? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I totally missed it, you know? And so that helps us come to a deeper understanding of the truth, of the goodness that we see, of the beauty that we see in each situation, you know?
Yeah. And what we're going through in anthropology is like Father Angel harps on what type of person do you want to be? You know, you're the material out of which you create yourself. Yeah. Right? So are you going to be the person who gets to the top of the 14er who's just got his butt kicked, you know, this whole mountain? It's kind of like what we did when we hiked up to, what's the tall mountain?
Mount Meeker?
No.
At the beginning of the year?
It's the one in Colorado Springs. Pikes Peak. We started from 3,000 feet.
I wasn't there that day.
We started from 3,000 feet of elevation.
Yeah.
And got to, you know, the top of Pikes Peak, and then took the train down, and I slept the whole train down. But it's like, are you going to be the type of person who gets to the top of that 14er and soaks in the beauty and the wonder and the awe of the creation in front of you and let that change you? Or are you going to be the type of the person who whips out his cell phone and says, I'm just going to take pictures of this. Right. You know, I'm going to live in this pseudo-reality, which Pieper also talks about in his book, The Abuse of Language, is this pseudo-reality that you create. It's like, no, I want to be chained to my core. I want to be the type of person who appreciates beauty, you know?
Yeah.
Right, and something that I think, and Tim, you could probably speak to this as well, that we really get our full dosage of this when we first come to the seminary, because we have what's called the spirituality year, right? Yeah. As the first year, it's before you start doing academics here at the seminary, and what they do is they take away your phones. Yeah. We have like this media fast, right?
Take away laptops, take away everything.
Right, exactly. So we have a whole entire 10 months of our lives where we have no access to technology or to phones or anything like that.
Except Saturdays
to like call our mom and stuff, because we definitely need to call our mom still. But but the whole point is that we're able to spend this 10 months with these 20 or 18 other brothers, where we have to like be present. Like there's no way of escaping. If I'm at a dinner table and the conversation is just like dying, I have to learn how to like
sit in that,
right, and to be a part of that, to be a part of that awkward silence, and to be formed by that awkward silence.
And I hope if your mom is listening that she actually can testify that you called her on those weekends.
I did.
So if you did it, well, then you have to apologize.
I definitely did. Normally, I'm really bad with that during seminary, but the SY year, it was just because I mean, you had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And the phone was right, like, because I didn't even have a cell phone. I just had to use like the landline phone in the seminary house.
That's awesome.
So if the sacristy was free, I would be calling my mom. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Because so it's not just coming to the truth of the, it's not just coming to the truth of seeing the beauty around us, but it's the truth of also what other people are trying to communicate with us. You know, so when we're having that texting conversation or we're on social media or something like that, as we said earlier, we're acting persons. So it's not just our words that are communicating, it's our affects in those situations, our emotions, everything. Our body and soul is expressing something to the person in front of us. And when we're behind a screen, all we see are the words. We don't see the inflection. We don't see like anything else. Right. And so it becomes really easy to on one hand be manipulative in the way that we send text messages.
Also
Like
just cheap. Like what kind
Yeah,
of
really cheap.
Do you want to receive affirmation from
Right.
somebody through a
Through a
screen? I mean,
text.
it's like
Right.
no, not even if it's not even correction. It's like what can you do? You can communicate about like a place to meet or
Yeah.
a time to meet.
yeah,
Yeah. And I was mentioning too earlier, before we were recording, so I took a philosophy of language class.
Oh, wow.
And one of the professors was talking about how he thought it was, he didn't necessarily have an answer. He was more just bringing it up. But he thought it was so fascinating that how shallow and empty, a text message could really be, especially, nowadays people are just like asking people out on dates and texts. It's just so dumb.
yeah.
But
All you guys out there,
Go take
Right.
flowers to her door.
Right.
Knock knock.
right,
Can you go on a
exactly.
date with
will you go on a date with me? Yeah,
But so you
Only
see
we
how
could
you
do
see
that.
how shallow that is. Yet there's something radically different about writing a letter.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Like because
even a letter.
I mean, it seems like it's the same. All it is just text.
Yeah.
It's just written text.
Well-
But the difference is it's tangible. It's physical. Like this letter was written by my hands. Like it touched
Yeah.
my hands. And like I'm thinking about like the soldier in World War II, right? That would be,
Right.
writing to someone that they love back home. Like how much that was cherished. Could you imagine if just like World War II soldiers were just texting?
Yeah.
They're just
No.
Like
No.
it would be so empty.
Yeah. My I'm a bad son, so I don't remember if this was my mom and dad's first year of marriage or their first year of dating. But my dad went off to Scotland, and he lived on St. Andrew's golf course, and my mom and him were separated for a year. And my mom to this day will say that she fell in love with my father because he wrote her,
Yeah.
religiously. And I can testify to that too, and that's why he would regularly write me handwritten, some type, but it's like regardless, like he took the time out of his day to sit and formulate something rather than to send something, a thread of messages. And some people's texting speed, have you seen the thumbs today?
Right,
It's like
yeah.
10 seconds, you said 10 paragraphs. It's like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right. And so that's beautiful. We're able to communicate a little bit more, and then even more so face to face,
Right. Yeah.
And so over text message, it can be a little bit easier to just start to just send text messages where we easily, I don't know, we send like 10 smiley faces with someone to someone, or like
Hey, I like emojis.
put all of these ha 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 ha, you know what I mean? And it's easy to just like put stuff like that flippantly, even if we're not like really feeling that.
Yeah.
Or when we're using a text message, like we can say all of these things, but on the inside, maybe we're like really hurt or we're suffering in some way, but like that can't be seen, right? And so it becomes even easier for this lack of honesty to happen in a digital world, because we know how much it happens in person anyways. Like sometimes we'll be struggling and we just put that smile on our face, say we're doing fine, say we're doing good, or not even that. Like if someone upsets us, same thing. Oh no, don't worry about it, man. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's so important for us to be able to develop good, healthy friendships. That type of friendship that we were talking about with Colin and Jeffrey, where we're leading someone else towards their end. We have to know the end. We have to know the truth about the end that we're trying to come to. And we have to be able to express that truth, whether it's hard to hear, whether it's good to hear, all of the above, right? So this virtue of affability that we're striving for is just key in developing friendships. Because if we can't be honest with someone, then there's really no way for us to get to know each other, to share life together, to share secrets, to share our intellect and will, all these different things.
And I think with the whole end in mind, I think something practical we can leave the listeners with, for the rest of Lent, is challenge them to put their cell phones away for a period of time. With smartphones today, on Sunday you get your little update that says your screen time was up 1,000% of shoots, or your screen time was down
Quick
25%.
Quick, really funny story about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we had our retreat a little while ago, like 2 weeks ago. And then the next week I used my phone for like an hour and 30 minutes. And I got this notification that said, your screen time is up 150% from last week. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
I was on
like,
a 5-day silent retreat. Yeah. So I think very substantially we can leave our listeners with, try to decrease, your cell phone usage just for the next 2 weeks to prepare your hearts for Jesus' entry into Jerusalem and ultimately to take up his cross for each and every one of us for that excess time that you have spent on your phone and maybe turned it into an idol of sorts.
Right.
And just to redeem, to enter into that redemption, and to shift your heart another way. And because, I think it was Sister Prudence or one of the sisters said that every Easter, every Triduum should be a deepening of your relationship to Jesus and should open up new horizons. And so for many people listening, I hope you do consider decreasing that time. So.
Yeah. Because like when we don't use our phone as much or social media as much, any of those things, and we pick up and at least call someone, like that's one more step, or see them face to face, talk to them face to face, then it forces us to be in those kind of like tense situations sometimes, and to handle things more honestly, And we've talked about this countless times. Like, honesty is one of the most important parts about prayer as well, right? Because if we come to God and we come to Him, kind of like putting on this like these
facade.
This facade. Like, I mean, we can't fool God, obviously, but in putting on this facade in prayer, it closes our hearts for God to meet us in those places that He really desires to meet us, those tough places. So the more honest we're able to be with other people, the more truthful we're able to be with other people, and the more charitable, therefore, we're able to be with other people, the more that's going to affect our spiritual life as well, because they go hand in hand. Like, our prayer life is all about relationship, right? And so they're going to affect each other. So we're going to be able to grow in deeper intimacy with Christ as well. Yeah. So that's a great challenge. Great challenge, man.
You just looked like you had something to say.
I mean, not really.
I have something to say.
Well,
do you guys have an email for Sons of Ours?
Here, I do.
Email?
Facebook.
I'm going to
sjvdenver@gmail.com.
I'm going to toot my own horn. If anybody wants a copy of the abusive language with respect to modern technology paper, email the Sons of Ours or Facebook message. And if it rocked Micah's world, hopefully it can rock your world too.
Yeah, that would be cool. So if you message us at the seminary's Facebook, so St. John Vianney Theological Seminary Facebook, or the email that I think we operate under is sjvdenver@gmail.com. So if you want to read Tim's paper, then shoot us a message and we'll send it out.
Yeah.
Sweet. I try to be practical and straightforward.
Have that be the only time you get on Facebook. Just kidding. This is always the irony. We're like working on a digital interface.
Get away from media, but we're gonna do media.
Yeah, right.
What's all the media?
It's hard, man.
And to be honest, this is actually how the podcast started, because our apostolate, we're, as we've mentioned before, Micah and I are part of the communications apostolate, and before the podcast existed, our apostolate was essentially just run the seminary Facebook.
Yeah, it was hard.
It was awful. It was so bad. Like, to have my Sunday assignment be just sitting in front of a computer, just like posting stuff on Facebook it was not healthy.
Innovation. You persevered, Ian.
But to have this, to know that we're actually like, reaching out to people and making a difference, I think is good. So anyway, that's really all we had for you today.
Yep.
We want to thank Father Brady for being our producer and being patient with us and helping us along.
And thanks, Tim Skoke, for coming on the air with us.
Yeah. And go take a shower, please.
No.
Sorry. Yeah. So, that's all we had. You are listening to Sons of Ours podcast.
That's ours with an A.
Boop, boop, boop. We'll see you next time. God bless.